The meeting ended 4 minutes early. Everyone is still in the room, laptops half closed, chairs pushed back, and the guy from the other team, Daniel, is standing near the whiteboard making conversation with whoever happens to be nearby. He lands next to you. He says something about the project, something casual, a small opener, nothing complicated, and your brain produces nothing, a clean white silence where a response should be. You feel the half-second pass, then the full second. Daniel's expression shifts almost imperceptibly, not rude, just recalibrating, and you say, "Yeah, totally," and look down at your laptop like something just came through that needs your attention. It didn't. There is nothing there. You are reading the same line of a Slack message you already read 20 minutes ago. Daniel moves on. The room clears. You pack up your things, and then, somewhere between the elevator and the parking garage, your brain wakes up completely. Suddenly, you have 4 things you could have said. Good things, interesting things. One of them was actually funny. You replay the moment, not once, but in a loop. Each pass slightly more excruciating than the last. You reconstruct the whole sequence. You edit it. You give yourself better lines. Somewhere in that replay, you clock the people in the room who seemed effortless, the ones who just talked, like it cost them nothing. You run it back and try to locate what they have that you don't. And that might be the worst part. Not that you froze, but that you can't find the reason. It doesn't feel like shyness. It doesn't feel like nerves. It just feels like absence. You've tried the standard fixes. Ask questions. Show curiosity. Just listen. You tried them. They didn't fail because you executed them badly. They failed before you even got the chance. Because by the time you remembered the advice, your brain had already gone somewhere you couldn't reach. That gap between the moment a conversation opens and the moment your mind comes back online is not a mystery. It has a specific cause, and the cause is not what you've been told. Here is what is actually happening in that room. The moment a social situation becomes unpredictable and a conversation with someone you half know in an unscripted moment absolutely qualifies, a part of your brain called the amygdala shifts into a scanning state. Think of it as a threat detection system that never got the memo that Daniel from the other team is not a predator. It starts monitoring, watching, running calculations about status, expectation, judgment, outcome. And while that process runs, the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for language, retrieval, spontaneous thought, goes partially offline, enough that the words that were there a minute ago are suddenly unavailable, like files that exist but won't open. It is a protection response, one that evolved to handle genuine threat, misfiring in a situation where the only actual risk is mild social awkwardness. Your brain cannot tell the difference. It responds to both with the same protocol. There is something specific worth understanding about when the freeze hits hardest. With strangers, there is no existing relationship to protect. The stakes feel manageable because nothing has been built yet. With close friends, your brain has enough evidence of safety that the threat scan barely activates. But with the person you half know, the co-worker from another team, the neighbor you've nodded to for 8 months, someone you've met twice at a friend's place, there is just enough relationship that something feels at stake, and not enough history for your brain to know how it will go. That specific middle ground is where the threat detection system is most aggressive. The people who trigger the worst freezes are not the unfamiliar ones. They are the ones you almost know. And this is the part nobody talks about. The content is there. The retrieval is blocked. That is the entire problem. Which is why every piece of standard advice has failed you at the exact moment you needed it most. Be curious is not something you can decide to be while your threat detection system is running a full scan. Curiosity is a state. It requires a brain that feels safe enough to be open. In the moment you're standing there, blank, staring at your laptop, that is not the brain you have access to. The advice was not wrong for everyone. It was wrong for this moment, the specific, physical, mid-freeze moment that nobody designs advice for. So if the advice was never the problem, what is? Think about the last time you had a real conversation with someone you were comfortable with. Not small talk, an actual conversation about something that interested you, or something that mattered, or even something you both found absurd. You had things to say. You made connections between ideas. You were articulate, maybe even funny. You weren't performing. You were just talking. Now think about the last time someone asked you about something you actually knew, a topic you'd read about, a project you'd worked on, a show you'd just finished watching. The words came, maybe more words than you expected. You didn't have to search for them. That is the same brain that goes blank in the break room. Same person, different conditions. That version of you is the default. It is what happens when the threat detection system is quiet enough to let the rest of your brain do its job. The problem has never been a shortage of content. You have opinions, you notice things, you think about things more than most people around you realize. The problem is access, specifically access under pressure. In low-stakes situations, with people you trust, the access is automatic. In unscripted moments with people you half know, the access gets cut. That is a situational problem, not a character one. Character problems don't have entry points. You can't practice your way into being a different kind of person. Situational problems do. Specific, small, learnable moments where the pattern can be interrupted before it completes. The freeze follows a sequence. The unfamiliar situation triggers the scan. The scan blocks retrieval. The silence stretches. The escape reflex fires. That sequence feels inevitable because you've lived it enough times that it has become automatic. Automatic is not the same as fixed. There is one tool that works at the very beginning of that sequence, before the silence stretches, before the escape reflex fires. It requires almost nothing, which is exactly why it works when everything else fails. The tool is called an observation opener. It is the simplest thing, and that is entirely the point. An observation opener is noticing something that is already in the room and saying it out loud. A true, low-stakes statement about the environment you are both standing in. It only requires that you look around and say what you see. That is a bar a frozen brain can clear. Before the scenarios, it helps to understand what makes an observation valid, because a frozen brain needs a filter it can actually run. The observation has to meet 3 conditions. It has to be something you both can see or experience. It has to be true. And it has to carry no opinion that could land wrong. That is the entire filter. Shared, true, neutral. A frozen brain can check those 3 things, even when it cannot produce anything else. You are in the break room. The coffee machine is running its full cycle, and it is taking longer than it should. Your coworker is standing next to you waiting. Your brain produces nothing. Instead of reaching for your phone, you say, "This thing takes forever." Your coworker laughs or agrees or says something about how it's been doing that all week. The conversation starts, not because you were charming, because you removed the silence before the freeze could complete. You are waiting for the elevator after a long afternoon meeting. Someone from a different floor is standing there too. You've seen each other, but never spoken. Your brain goes into scan mode. You say, "Long one today." They nod. Maybe they add something. Maybe they don't. Either way, the silence is broken on your terms, before the dread sets in. You are at your cousin's birthday gathering. You don't know most of the people there. Someone is standing near the food table, same as you, clearly also not in the middle of a conversation. You say, "Everything looks good. I don't know where to start." They respond, "Something is now happening that wasn't happening 10 seconds ago." You are at the gym. Someone finishes using the cable machine right as you were about to ask. You say, "Good timing." 2 words. The interaction is over in 15 seconds, and your nervous system registers it as a small, successful exchange. This won't work every single time. Some people won't respond. That is fine. The goal is not a perfect conversation. It is interrupting the freeze before the escape reflex fires. Now, the part most people don't address. The opener worked. The other person responded. What comes next? Almost always, their response contains something. A detail about how the machine has been slow all week. Comment about how long the meeting ran. A small piece of information about them. That content, the thing they just said, is your next line. You do not have to generate it. They already gave it to you. The simplest follow-up in the world is just responding to exactly what they said, matching their energy. Echoing a word they use, letting the silence become their turn. A frozen brain can do all of those things. None of them require wit or spontaneity. And sometimes the opener produces one exchange, and then a silence, and then you both move on. That is not a failure. That is a different outcome than reaching for your phone before a single word was spoken. Your nervous system registers the difference, even when your conscious mind dismisses it. The threat detection scan runs because your brain doesn't know what is expected of you, what the other person wants, whether you will say something wrong. An observation opener sidesteps all of that. There is no expectation attached to it. It cannot be wrong. It is just a true thing about a shared moment. The scan has nothing to flag. And in the space that creates, even a small space, the rest of your brain comes back online. You are not trying to have a great conversation. You are trying to survive the first 5 seconds. The observation opener handles those 5 seconds. What comes after is easier than you think, because the freeze is a starting problem, not a middle problem. Once something is in motion, retrieval returns. You have more to say. You always did. Over time, something else happens. Each time the observation opener works, even partially, even just breaking the silence without an escape, your brain logs it, not consciously, but the threat detection system is calibrated by experience. Every low-stakes interaction that goes fine quietly recalibrates what fine looks like. The scan becomes slightly less aggressive. The freeze becomes slightly shorter, not overnight, slowly. But the direction changes. The replay changes too. Instead of spending the elevator ride cataloging what you should have said, you occasionally spend it noticing that something happened. Small, unremarkable, but without the escape. That data accumulates somewhere different than the failures did, and it starts, gradually, to outweigh them. That small, unremarkable moment, standing at the coffee machine, saying 2 words, surviving it, is the exact thing you never believed was possible for you. What the people who seem effortless in those moments have is a longer history of low-stakes interactions that went fine. That is the entire difference. Accumulated evidence that the moment is survivable, collected one unremarkable exchange at a time. That evidence is available to you. It always was. You just had no entry point into it. The observation opener is not a conversation trick. It is how the evidence starts accumulating. Every time you use it, even imperfectly, even when the other person barely responds, you are adding a data point your brain did not have before. That is how the calibration changes. Not through confidence, through repetition of small things that go fine. You were never missing the ability. You were missing the entry point. Now you have one.